Did you ever think that we in America would be living in a time where teenagers can do pretty much whatever they want, tell you off, cuss you out, threaten you, and nothing can happen to them? Well, guess what? It's 2023. Wake up. Not all teenagers are like this in America, but a lot are in what I'm going to discuss. There are teenagers that are homeschooled. They're quality students. They have respect, and they know more than any of the kind of teens I won't be talking about. I knew a family personally in Colorado, homeschooled their two beautiful daughters. Those girls had their stuff together. Now, there's going to be profanity in this video. I'm going to be talking about my life as a school bus driver. I no longer drive a school bus. I got out of that. I still work with youth, but I no longer drive a bus. I decided to work with special needs students because they're a lot more gracious and appreciative than are today's so-called normal kids. Now, as I've talked about in my other videos about, and before anybody doubts me, I look youthful. I'm almost 60, okay? And I have worked with school buses for 25 years. I briefly ran a troubled respite home in Akron, Ohio when I was married. Yes, I'm divorced. I went through some stuff as a child growing up. I was adopted at 4 months of age. My mother put me up for adoption. And this is important to tell what I'm telling you, so bear with me. And the family that adopted me, I never bonded with my mother. My mother she had her own problems. That's all we're going to say. And I have no contact with them. I have no contact with any of the family except some people that are no longer in contact with them either. I've had to learn to figure out life pretty much by myself. Made an awful lot of relational decision mistakes, a lot of spontaneous mistakes. And unfortunately, wisdom tends to come more when you get older. Try to tell the youth of today that. Good luck. I saw in the news last night in Austin, Texas, you've got a bunch of extremely dangerous, disrespecting, lawless teens taking over intersections, driving cars in a way they shouldn't be driven, bragging and gloating that the police ain't going to be able to do anything about it. I don't know why the sitting in Mariers, somebody doesn't call the National Guard and roll tanks in the streets and say, it's over, boys. It's funny how we live in a country you can't do anything to these kids. I'm going to refrain from saying in here what I think should be done because people are just so ridiculous. It's okay for teens to do whatever they want. But if I was to say what I think ought to be done, they'd foam at the mouth. Driving a school bus is interesting. I've seen a progression from the 90s to today. And again, I do not drive school bus. So I'm not representing anybody. I'm representing my collective experiences. Teenagers can stand at a bus stop smoking a blunt. You smell the marijuana when you open the door. And I say, what are you doing? You need to wait. I said, I'm not waiting for you. And you call dispatch today. And I say, hey, I got a high school student standing out here smoking dope. Can I shut the door and leave? Oh, no, you have to transport him. Really? The kids know this. The schools are virtually doing nothing about it. You cannot deny a child a ride on a bus. Okay, but he's doing drugs right there. All the other students can see it. Gets on the bus smelling like dope. This kid was, for whatever reason, quit riding the bus. I think he got expelled out of school the last few weeks of school. And I'm coming through the neighborhood to drop off kids, and he stands in the middle of the road and goes like this. It's funny how brave they feel when they're not on the bus. And it's funny how quick they are. When I confronted it when he got back on, the first day of school, he come on smelling like dope. I said, really? We're going to do this again? I said, I've told you, use the blunt spray. Don't get on my bus smelling like weed. The very next day, he's out there smoking a toke. Said, last year you flipped me off walking down the street. And I said, why do you even ride this bus? Well, I wasn't on the bus when I did it. I said, but you feel like you're a big man. Why don't you just walk to school? And then you can smoke your doobie all the way to school. Folks, I'm telling you, bus drivers are leaving school bus driving because of this kind of crap. School districts have become the largest tax-funded daycare centers in the United States. They care about getting kids to school for the breakfast. They care about getting the money. There's federal government money involved for head count. Make no mistake about it. These kids that are smoking dope, how many of them are getting an education? Let's get real here. Kid can stand up, walk up and down the aisle. I stopped abruptly one day because I told kids to sit down, and I usually wait for them when they get on. I don't holler. I wait for them to take their seat, and then I go. Kid gets up, walks around. I didn't slam on the brakes, but I came to an abrupt stop. He then starts yelling at me, threatening to get his grandmother on me. And I said, your grandmother isn't going to touch me. You need to sit down. You're constantly walking around. And several of you running your mouth back there at me for something that happened at another stop. You tell a kid to move up today. They don't have to. And in a place that I recently worked, I was told by a supervisor, don't ever go to the back of your bus on those routes. Really? You don't know if they're going to jump you. How did we get to a point in America? Because I don't believe in that. If I got a problem, I will set the brake and I will walk back and say, what's going on back here? And for the record, I had good evals every place I worked with students. The phones were not ringing off the wall at any transportation I had worked for. Punks in Austin. Texas ought to say, forget it. You can't get a driver's license till 21. That'll never happen. They don't give kids bail. They're not going to do anything to the kids. The kids know this. And I am going to tell you that a political party in the United States is totally responsible for allowing the flourishing of this behavior. Since 2020, crime has escalated to new heights with no shame. And we're allowing youngsters that should be getting a swat to the butt, even as teens, for the disrespect and lawlessness that they're doing, are not being disciplined. Society is not dealing with it. And they create fear. The Bible says, spare the rod, spoil the child. And we've got a generation of adults, the baby boomers on down, that no longer will spank their kids. There's either no discipline or abuse. And kids will be the first one. You touch me. And I know some parents that still said, you're going to threaten me? I'll call 911 for you and I'll still give you a swat. So go ahead. You want to be put in foster care while I go to jail? I'm going to be critical of something, and this is going to offend a lot of teenage girls, but oh well. Teenage girls are among the most narcissistic, self-centered I've ever seen today. As a bus driver, they don't say good morning, please, thank you, nothing. They wake up with the Adonis complex, and they think because they can do these jerky, stupid moves on TikTok that they're something. Have you ever seen this stuff? And now you got teenagers with half shirts on and no bra, and they're going, I mean, tell me that that doesn't look stupid. But they think they're cool. Remember when the kids were swallowing Tide balls? Remember when the kids were going into schools and taking apart bathroom stalls, busting toilets and sinks? And even a memo went around at the last place I drove bus for, warning us that kids are being challenged to go up and slap a teacher on the butt. Now, watch an adult slap a kid on the butt in a public school setting and watch how fast he or she loses their job. But teens are going up and doing stuff and filming themselves do it. Did you hear about the deep throat challenge where a teen girl was taking a teen boy's ding dong down the throat, and how long could she keep it in there? Folks, when I was a kid, in order to get pornography, you had to go to the Circle K or the convenience store or whatever. It was behind the counter. I remember the first time when I had turned 18, my cousin wanted me and I was scared to death. I said, man, I don't want to go ask the clerk for a Playboy. You had to work to get it. You had to be 18 to get it. And if you were in a small town, you didn't want to do it because you didn't want somebody reporting it back to your parents. Today, kids are getting on the internet. Kids are sexting. And social media is hosting and been a great platform for teenagers to send illicit material back and forth. You got teens today that haven't been disciplined. They're having sex. They're drinking alcohol. They're doing drugs. And they get in the presence of an adult who doesn't go along with their phony baloney. And all they're going to do is bow their back up and say, shoot, I'm doing adult things. Who the heck are you? I like kids. I really do. I remember when I started driving a bus way back in the day in 1990. And the first time I got a load of junior high students, I looked in the mirror and I was petrified. Kids walked up on the bus, hey, homie. And I was nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And then I grew to loving driving middle schoolers. Those are the ones you want to avoid. Now, believe it or not, I'd rather drive middle schoolers than elementary students and high school both. If you can believe that. Why? Well, because I identify with middle schoolers. I was wired. I didn't think about what I was doing. And it's a perfect match for me. You develop rapport. But high school students, they're taller than me, they're bigger than me. And when they haven't been raised right, they're going to make it their aim to try to create something where I react to their nonsense. And it's got to the point now where the disrespect the kids level at you, bus drivers aren't paid enough. They're told that they must maintain professionalism. But you got a kid, you've told them to sit down, and then the kid is saying, fuck you. When you got third grade boys calling girl, B-I-T-C-H, whore, flying over the seat to punch a girl in the face, 3 other kids jumping in, and I'm trying to pull kids apart, can't get to the two-way. And now when I was doing it, was told, don't just call on the radio, don't get involved. I'm not going to sit there and let a kid punch another kid to bloody pulp. We're told to do so, not get in the middle of it. Now, I understand if kids are twice my size, and I've had that too. Two African-American girls running their mouth. Hey, girls, come on. Hot day, Friday, windows are down, 78 passenger bus loaded with high schoolers, and the fur flies. And I'm like, oh my gosh, pulled the brake. I got a fight on my bus. I go to the back. I don't get between them. I put my hand gently on the shoulder. Come on, ladies. It's Friday. Can we just get home? This is not enough space in here to be fighting. Can we just stop? And another high school student says, Mister, I'm gonna get between them. I said, you better watch yourself. I got one to move up front. Everything stopped. I get 2/3 through the route, and some girl comes up and punches a student in the face who didn't even do anything. And then everybody's up and at it again. They got the stop sign out, traffic stopped, and you're just like, guys, take this out. Take this off the bus. And you play the game of, well, you got to write it up to the school. The school has to request the camera. And then when they pull the camera, well, we didn't see anything, or the camera wasn't working, and I want to know something. And I'm defending bus drivers because they go through a lot. There's no cameras in the classrooms at these schools. There's no classrooms, for the most part, in the classroom. No cameras in the classrooms. Teacher calls up the principal's office, says, Tommy's acting up, blah, blah, blah. Principal's going to take the side of the teacher. Bus driver writes up a detailed report. Well, we're going to have to pull the video. Why is it bus drivers are always questioned? I can tell you that most bus drivers do not go into the profession because they have it in their mind to falsely accuse children. Most people that I've ever met get into bus driving. Yeah, they want a job, but they want the challenge. They want to work with youth. And it's our very youth that is driving those people out of the seat. Some places I've worked, we should get hazard pay. Then you're asked to do double routes where you're picking up your route and then somebody else who called in, and those two turf wars don't get along. Now you're driving cyanide and TNT, and you hope you don't hit a bump to set it off. And yes, if you can believe this, in some places I've driven routes where they're standing in the aisles. That's how full the bus is. It's against DOT law. But guess what? They're making you do it. And what's funny is if you have an accident where a bus flips over, DOT is going to come down on the driver, and the driver is not going to be able to blame the company because the company is going to wash their hands of it. Puts the drivers in a very, very, very bad situation. And what I'm seeing with transportation all across the USA is it seems that their only focus, the only thing they care about, getting kids to and from school. They don't care if another driver uses your bus, takes it on a trip, and kids blow up the bus, rip seats, trash everywhere. You go and report it. Nothing happens. They don't fuel your bus. They leave the lights on. You come into Monday morning and your bus is dead. You tell your supervisor, oh, really? But miss a kid on a route. Did you go by that stop? Yes, I did. Well, they're saying you didn't go by. You can check GPS. Well, I'm going to need you to go by the stop again. Man, I'm 30, 45 minutes away from that. Well, I'm going to need you to go by the Man, I was there at the time. Check the GPS. Why is our society, and you got habitual kids, and parents know how to work the system, and you expect drivers to come to work? And you get into some transportation places and you got crappy managers, crappy supervisors that scowl and growl. Makes you really want to come to work, don't it? One transportation place that I worked at, the starting pay is $13 an hour. Some of the worst students in their district of any place I've worked. $13 an hour. And there's no camera at the very back of the bus, which misses many seats. Kids smoking pot on the bus, black and milds. I remember years ago at Denver Public Schools, my supervisor told me, even with cameras, she is retired, but even with cameras, they would catch a girl giving a guy a blowjob in the back seat of the bus. And as a bus driver, we're living in a day and age where they don't like the cops, and teenagers typically don't like authority, and then you're just trying to do your job. I've had African American students tell other drivers, we don't want that white boy driving our bus. One place I drove, it was communicated to me by management. I was probably the first white guy that drove in that area bus routes. It took those kids a good while to get used to me, and pretty soon I had a pretty good middle school route. Other than your typical that no matter who's driving, they're going to be a problem. And when I finally left, the kids to this day are asking, where is he? What happened to him? Yes, I've been the minority on my buses for years. And you look at what the media is doing to these kids, teaching black kids that whites are privileged, whites are racist, which is a lie, which is nothing but a lie. Not all whites are like that. High school student gets on my bus with no shirt on. I'm like, no. Giving me the attitude because I told him put on a shirt. One high school girl jumps on the bus with nothing but a sport bra on and short shorts. And the schools do not want to deal with bus discipline in a lot of places in America today. I'm not singling anybody out. I'm not mentioning names of people that have been guilty. But this is a nationwide problem, and you wonder why you don't have bus drivers. We were not trained like in the police academy. We're not allowed to touch these children. And you got upwards of 78 youth or more sitting behind you. And there are days I drove the bus going, it's a really comfortable feeling when you know that as a white guy, a lot of these kids don't like me just because of the color of my skin. Then you add in another factor with the African American community. A lot of these boys are raised by black women. Dad's not in the picture, so they'll be damned if they're going to listen to a male authority figure at all. And people don't realize that. For me to say that, people say, oh, that's racism. No, it isn't. No, it is not. You can take white children too. If they're raised by mommy and they've seen a deadbeat dad, they're not going to respect males as a general rule. We're not trained this in most of your transportation training with student management. Those factors are never even brought up, and they need to be. That the climate today is very hostile to a white male. The climate today is hostile to somebody who's straight. The climate today is hostile to somebody who has conservative political beliefs. Boom, you put me on a bus, and I don't discuss my political beliefs with students. Believe it or not, I'm very outspoken. Anybody that knows me, other than students, And I've had students ask to be on my Facebook, and I said, nope, no children allowed, no exceptions. The only time I had a student on my Facebook is when I was friends with the mother, and I used to take the daughter and the son to the movies and to all you can eat buffet to give mom a break. That was it. That was it. And that was many years ago in another place. And there was never any phony baloney. And the family respected me. But I tell students, no. Number one, you're not going to agree with my rants. I can pretty much guarantee you. And two, you're a child. You don't belong in my Facebook. And there are people, there are drivers that run that risk by allowing students in their Facebook. And I tell them, don't do it. I like kids. But the problem is today, dealing with teenagers isn't like dealing with them 50, 60 years ago. They couldn't get away with that stuff back then. Not like this. There's always been bad kids. But then you got the people say, well, kids aren't the problem. Well, okay, whatever. There are factors. There are environmental factors. There are parental or no parental factors. But there's media. When young ladies can get on there and be indiscretionary with no bra on, jumping up and down, and they don't know whether it's men or teens or peers thumbs upping their stuff. And this is something I need to say as a man that women today are not getting in our society. When you allow your teenage daughter to dress the way you're allowing them to dress with midriff showing, no bras, it don't matter what the age of a man is. We are biologically wired to look at the equipment that God gave them. And to say that, people, oh, you're a pervert. No, it's called sex drive. It don't matter if somebody's 70 or if they're 14. You see nipples bouncing around, poking through a shirt. I am affected by it. I've had students come on to me in the past, and I never, ever opened the door for anything. Kids today are not so innocent. They're dressing inappropriate. You got these boys running around with literally over half their butt showing. I've had to tell students, hey, pull up your pants. I don't want to see your butt crack, dude. And somebody told me one day on social media that that's racist for me to tell that. I said, that's racist? This is a school bus. I don't need to see a child's ass. Now you got the whole dynamic of binary, non-binary, pronouns, transgender. And I do not, no matter what people choose to do, I don't believe in harassing or bullying anybody. I don't support it. I do not support it. But I have a friend in Long Island, New York, drives a school bus, and they have to go to pronoun training. This is getting ridiculous. That we're allowing an entire generation of people to redefine the rules and tell us how things are going to roll. And you know what's funny is I'm on a school bus site on Facebook, and I've had other women, mostly women, and a few men that don't know me from other districts. They see my style or my chain or my off the shoulder. Of course, mind you, I'm not going to work like that. And they have a problem with that. I don't look like what a bus driver should look like when I was driving. And there was a lot of hatred and judgmentalism. And I have stood up to the nastiest. I don't get up in their personal space. I don't make threats to students. But one day a kid was threatening me and running his mouth at the back of the bus. And I said, man, I have asked you how many times to sit down. And yes, I stopped abruptly. You go ahead and report me. I'm on a camera right there. You and everybody running your mouth back there, all while I'm driving the route, think you can do whatever you want unchecked. And when I come to an abrupt stop, now you're ready to get into a legal brouhaha with me. The management to be did pull the video and said, you didn't do anything wrong. And we've had drivers brake check kids. That is not something I endorse. But what the kids don't realize, if a car pulls out in front of me, I'm going to hit the brakes. And I went back up to my seat and stood on the doghouse, and I said, and he kept running. I said, if you come up into my area and you touch me, the state I live in gives me the right to defend myself. I'm just saying. So you need to choose your actions wisely. And I sat down in my seat with my back to the individual, and that stopped it. But you got kids today carrying guns and weapons. How long do we let this crap go on? When's the day going to come when a student stands up in the back of the bus and says, I got control of all of you, and holds a weapon out? Are we trained to deal with that? No. Nobody wants to talk about it. There are dynamics that enter that are not discussed in student management today that I'm going to talk about. Everybody remember Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris? I lived in Colorado. I was driving for Denver Public Schools out of the Northeast Terminal back when that all broke loose in 99. I had run home on my midday, did some stuff downtown, rode the bus back. Came in the terminal. I'm like, where is everybody? The whole break room was empty, and I went all the way to the back. There's a pool table room back there and a TV up on the ceiling. I said, oh, what's everybody? Something about a school shooting. And as we're watching the events unfold, they're talking about propane tanks, and they're talking about this, and suddenly they drop the bomb, Columbine. And one of the black ladies in the room says, oh my gosh, that's right here. It's right up against the southwestern edge of Denver's jurisdiction, but it was under Jefferson County. And what's really interesting about that whole case is the parents never came forward, never talked. And I started paying attention to these school shootings, mostly Caucasian, middle class to upper middle class boys. Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris were picked on and laughed at, and they would go out and shoot bowling pins and post pictures to them. And if you can believe it, they had girlfriends that thought they were the cat's meow. And the rumor has it that both the boys had their bedroom doors padlocked and locked so their parents couldn't get in there. That's something right there, I'm going to tell you. And I had told my son when he was little, you ever put a padlock on your room, I'll bust it. This is your mother and father's house, and we have rights. And if I find stuff in there, I'll call the police. If you're at school, I'll have the police come in, and we'll wait for you to come home, and we'll have the police have a nice little friendly chat with you. And upper middle class parents, and I'm going to say this, they buy their kids all the stuff. They buy their kids all the toys. But there's a big disconnect. And only years later did Miss Klebold come out and say, I'm really sorry. And I'm just like, whatever. Do I believe they were responsible for that? Yes and no. Why were they not involved in their kids' life as a healthy family should be? Where were they? Yeah, buy their kids stuff and leave them alone. I was raised like that. And trust me, we were getting into trouble. Vandalizing buildings. I grew up in a messed up home. My dad was passive. My mother was domineering. My mother would put my dad out. My dad would go get an apartment. 2 weeks later, He's breaking the apartment rent and coming back into the house. I mean, that's what I grew up with. Then they purchased a condo, and my mother lived in the condo. My dad and I lived in the house, and my mother used me as a football. Well, we're going to move to Bishop, and I'd like you to live with me and help you. My dad says you're not going to be a mommy's boy. And going through all that, both my parents smoked. I was allergic to cigarette. They knew I had allergies, but their smoking was more important than my air. I never thought of picking up a gun and shooting somebody, ever. This generation, anything goes. You look at Sandy Hook Elementary, you got a mother with a so-called special needs kids and got a gun collection. How come the kid was able to get access to that? But then you had a Hispanic male who shot his aunt, took the Dodge truck, wrecked the truck, and went down into Texas there and shot up the school. But the narrative has been big school shootings, generally Caucasian, upper middle class males. How many of the students on these school buses have that potential or capability within them? But let's back this whole thing up. We got a culture, we got a public education system that teaches kids that evolution is the way it is and there is no God. And that's a big contributing factor. Now, I'm not going to get into a mechanical dissertation of why I don't believe in evolution. I don't need to. I've done my own research and there's nothing scientific about it. It was stated as a theory. Now it's taught as a fact. And the fossil record and the living record do not support transitional life forms. Darwin himself said that in his latter years, that the fossil record was against him. They show complete specimens. Then you had Dr. Spock come in, 60s, 70s, saying, spanking damages a child's ego. Let me tell you something after 25 years of driving a bus. And I don't care what other bus drivers think of me and my style, my way. I'm weird. I'm different. But I do my job with integrity. I deal with kids with integrity. And I've seen something that is clear as the day is from the night. There is so much ego out there in the youth today. They have no fear of bus cameras. They have no fear of me. But let's take African American kids that don't like me for the color of my skin. Black men, older and 3 times my size, told me, man, now I know why you got off of that route. I said, they're not even respecting you. No. Calling me this, calling me that. I remember back in the day when I'd climb on a bus and you'd see a big guy driving the bus. I never thought about running my mouth at him. Because I figured that guy get up out of a seat, they're gonna hurt me. These kids not only aren't afraid, they'll sit there and poke the bear. You're just doing your job. And you get up in the morning, you pre-trip your bus, you come in with a good attitude, you talk to your coworkers, you leave the yard, and you got kids coming from fucked up homes. You're going to stand out there and smoke a blunt, and they know exactly what they're doing. And you say, I've told you don't come on this bus smelling like weed, but you write it up and the school plays the consumer. Well, we weren't there. So my word's not good enough. How about if you ask the other students? But in some of the cultures of bus driving, the students will not snitch because they will suffer mightily for it. I had a girl that was quiet, moved from another place, One day she was the first one to get on and she said, "I just want you to know I appreciate you." I was shocked. I said, "Wow, ma'am, thank you." She goes, "No, you're a nice guy, and some of these people on here." I said, "This is a tough route, man. This is a tough bunch of people." I don't care what anybody says. We're living in dark times. There's hatred towards the police. There's hatred towards anybody who's in authority. I see the value of a mother and father. I have a son. I divorced. And I left her because the marriage was not good. I have no remorse about that. But did my son suffer as a result of that? Absolutely. Absolutely. But we live in a society where people don't take ownership for their stuff. I have an ex who, to this day, goes and tells all her friends that Pacific this, Pacific that. 99% of what comes out of her mouth in regard to me is untrue. While she had primary custody, she allowed things to go on that I never would have allowed. And those have affected my son in a very negative way. And I am not an expert in child development or child psychology, but when you work 25 years and you drive a bus, you learn to become more proficient in psychology and understanding people. When you work in public adult customer service, which I've also done, you learn more about psychology than somebody going to a four-year college will and reading Sigmund Freud and Jungian philosophies. Most psychologists I meet today need to go check themselves in, to be honest with you. School psychologists that I've met, they got more psycho issues going on than somebody who's not a psychologist. So I believe in education, but I don't believe education is always give you the experience. Sometimes you gain the experience by being involved with these kids, and you learn about basic human psychology by dealing with students enough to know what's going on at this age group and this age group. But when you get into tougher areas where you have a lot of hood and a lot of high crime neighborhoods, and you got third graders calling the B word to other girls and getting up out of their seat, and when boys have no concept, you don't hit a girl, they don't care. School bus drivers don't get paid enough to deal with this. Not at all. You could lose your job in an instant if you handle that situation wrong. You're told not to let your emotions get involved. You're told this, you're told that, but then you don't get the backing you need from the schools or your transportation department. You tell your supervisor, you tell people, they're not going to go against the school district. They're not going to do it. And I'm going to nail the company. I worked for Durham School Services in Spokane years ago. I would not recommend it to anybody. I would not recommend a contract bus company to anybody at all. And I had a problem with a load of middle schoolers. A 12-minute bus route, 20-something kids. That's it. Asking me questions. This was unbelievable. A teen girl says, "Bus driver, do you look at porn?" I said, "That is not an appropriate question." "Yeah, but it's human." That is not an appropriate question. Girls asking, "Do you masturbate?" And I always say, that is not an appropriate question. This bus is an extension of the classroom. We don't talk about that stuff on air. One girl kept on and on. But it's normal and it feels so good. I said, I'm going to ask you again to stop. She wouldn't. In Denver, I went back and told my female supervisor, she called the guardian. I'm not going to get into personal beyond that. They removed her from off the bus for the rest of the deal. This particular route in Spokane, the kids would get off the bus and stand in front of the bus and not move out of the way. And I'd, come on, move. Flipping me off, wrote it up, went back to the lame company I worked for. And this is a company who told people in training, if you go on Facebook or social media about us, you will be fired. They fired a bus monitor. She did not mention the name of the company. We had a hellacious winter that year, 2009, 2008, 2009. And bus just got stuck. I remember I was driving a high school route. One side of my chains came off. I didn't even know it. And I was spinning on the level and almost 2 feet of crusted over. It rained, froze, thawed, rain, froze, thawed. The streets weren't plowed. It was a mess. One of the girls said, do you want us all to go to the back of the bus? I said, man, I didn't even think of that. Go for it. And they all piled up back there and we got out of it. And that same high school girl said, man, you're one of the first bus drivers that was able to get us to school. Everybody else got stuck. I said, man, I drove in Minnesota. You think I'm going to let this storm beat me? You had to call in on the radio every time you had to put it in reverse. I couldn't get through. So-and-so to base, I'm stuck, blah, blah. We were told you're the captain of the ship, and I'm not going to get permission to back up 2 feet and to do the reverse drive and a rock. I'm not doing this. And when I got back, I talked to another driver and I said, did you call in for all the times you, he goes, hell no. He said, that's so stupid. Bus drivers are looked down on. And I'm going to say it by a lot of administration in the schools. They don't think we're important enough. They don't care. There are exceptions. I've had teachers, I've had principals in some places that have totally supported us. Others, they don't think we're as important as a teacher is. The students in a classroom, the teachers facing them. The students on a bus, our back is to them. We're strapped down in a seatbelt, kind of vulnerable. And I'm telling you, I've seen it all. Student management doesn't teach you how to deal with this stuff. And you want my opinion? Drug tests should be implemented in the schools. When I report that the kid was smoking pot, he goes in and takes a piss test. If it comes back a positive, expel him. Then you get the police involved, and mom and police have to meet and go to court. And the kid will go through a drug and alcohol treatment program paid for by the parent, put it back on the parent where it belongs, and take it off the school district. And upon completion and successful passing of that, that kid can be readmitted back to school. And if the kid does not come back to school, the parent will have to continue to go to court to defend why. But they won't do these things. You know, it's funny. I remember when I was in high school, there was a kid walking down the hall playing Pink Floyd's We Don't Need No Education on a ghetto blaster. I remember thinking how disrespectful that was. Funny thing is, I like the song today because if you listen to the words of the song, we don't need no thoughts control. We do and we don't. It depends on context. But honestly, I can agree with Pink Floyd. Sometimes I want to say, hey, teacher, leave them kids alone. The education system is teaching kids to be activists. It's teaching them to question authority, to throw off the shackles of anything that makes sense. And that's not the purpose of education. It was supposed to be reading, writing, and arithmetic. I support schools that are doing more skills-based, like Denver, Colorado has the Career Education Center, CEC, one of the best programs. I want to be the change I wish to see in the world. But how does somebody come up against that bastion of a fortress? How do you change transportation? I've often wanted to, in places I've worked, put a video together of the diversity where I've worked and say, let's do a video promoting transportation and diversity and making a difference in kids' lives. But actually, the kids are making a difference in our lives and they're driving us out of the profession. I left school bus driving for some health issues, got vertigo. And I believe that was a result of catching the Delta variant. And I believe that was a spinoff. I had never had a vertigo issue. I drove mountain trips, up and down switchbacks. I never got dizzy. But I also, when I left that, was glad to be relieved of having to deal with so much hatred, so much rebelliousness, that just you doing your route, you got those same kids that the system won't deal with every single day, finding a way to get under your skin. And you got drivers that try to be, oh, I never have a problem on my bus. And I remember riding on a site, then come out here and drive. I dare you. One place I worked, we had a guy retire after 37 years at a nuclear power plant facility, came out to drive a bus. In 3 months, he was broken and came to me and said, I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving. $13 an hour, huh? $13 an hour. $37 years at a nuclear power plant. You want to talk about a tension job? Boy, you got an alarm go off. Wow, your life could be in danger. He did it for 37 years. School bus with these kids and the disrespect. 3 months. And he was beat down. I don't mean physically, but emotionally, it broke him. I remember Denver years ago, I picked up a route. There was a couple black students and one Hispanic kid, and somebody had missed this midday, and I was out there, and they said, can you go get them? I'm transporting them, and the Hispanic kid stands up and walks up and down the aisle. I said, hey, sir, I need you to sit down, please. And he ignored me. The first time I said, sir, I need you to take your seat. He mumbled something, sat down. I'm going down a 4-lane with a center lane road. Speed limit's what? 40. He gets up and walks around again. I stopped in the right lane, put on my 4-ways, pulled the brake, said, sir, I need you to move up. You can't stop in the lane of traffic. I said, I'm in the right lane with my hazard lights on. Yes, I can. I said, I cannot ride the bus with you walking up and down the aisle. Kid ran his mouth at me. I'd never had him before in my life. He said, you're racist. I said, how's that? Asking me to sit down? I said, well, you see these other 2 kids here? They haven't got up once. So how is that racist? I've had students accuse me of racism because I asked them to sit down. And all I did was look and say, turn around and look at all your peers on this bus. Do you see any of them out in the aisle? Do you? So how's that racist? The media has given all this attention to whites and how bad and evil we are. And I'm tired of it. It's basically opened the door for other races to abuse, discredit, disrespect, and they don't got to listen to us. There's something wrong when the evening news no longer does accurate, unbiased reporting of events, but now are dictating a monologue and a narrative, which is putting us at the same risk that minorities used to be in this country. I thought we were supposed to be moving beyond that and being fair and equitable to everybody. But apparently it seems that it's okay to have open season on one group, and that seems to be sanctioned and condoned by the Democrat left. How do we affect change? Well, I believe America is not heading in a good direction. It hasn't been for some time. And I don't believe it's going to change. It would have to take a major upheaval in society, like maybe another country invading us, maybe another country declaring war on us, for people to suddenly go, whoa, okay, now we got a whole country coming after us. You know, when you have a country that's had it good for so long, and then you got people that move up into politics, the baby boomer generation, which, by the way, I told a friend of mine, I'm Generation X. The baby boomer is, if you look at the Titanic on the ocean floor, there's the bow section, there's stern. And baby boomers where the big break happened. And this outwash behind them, especially Generation Z, would be the Titanic stern. Looks like it blew up. The whole plating peeled and splayed backwards. And I know there are people that would disagree with this video. I fully expect that. But people who would disagree with this video would also think there's nothing wrong with today's youth. So you choose who you're going to believe. And people will look at me and not like something about me and say, well, I don't see how he could have driven a bus and worked with kids. Man, in every transportation place I've worked, there's been some good people and there's been some bad people. And I remember a time when I was in Duluth, Minnesota, and I hauled elementary schools that are closed down now, that are not even there anymore. The building's there. People turn them into art studios or whatever. And I take the kids to the Duluth Zoo. Teachers ask me to go in with them, talk to the teachers. Then they go and have lunch on the playground. I remember being in my 20s. Then I still have energy, but even then, I'd run around. I'd get on the monkey bars when they used to have cool playground equipment. Oh my gosh, the kids chased me and piled on me and jumped on me, and the teachers loved it. Now, in this day and age, you can't touch anybody. There was nothing inappropriate. That was in the 90s. I remember I used to get on a road that was real busy in Duluth, morning traffic going downtown to work. I had a lot of stops on that road. I'd do my student pickup. Kid sits down. I signal, move to the right, let all the cars go by. After doing that for years, somebody wrote the company a letter, said, I want to thank the driver of bus 380. He's courteous, picks up the kids, does things safe, moves to the right, lets the traffic pass. I really appreciate that, because bus drivers generally don't do that. You do. You have some bus drivers that think it's funny to stack up all that traffic. I don't. Because that just makes people want to run around the stop sign even more. And people look at me and make a judgment, but I'm conscientious of what's going on out there. I don't want to be stuck behind a bus any longer than I have to be. So when somebody pulls over and says, I'm like, thanks, dude. Beep, beep. Social lubrication is needed in our job as a bus driver with the cars out there. Social lubrication is needed with irate, feminist, angry women teachers that they see a man and they don't like us, and you got to talk to them about a student that they're taking off. Oh, yeah. Student management doesn't teach you about this. There's layers in our society. If you're a feminist and you don't like men, and then you see a white guy driving a bus, well, there's a strike against me. But I have had to thread the needle in 4 different states, different districts, companies, counties, whatever, and still keep my brain and my head intact. And guess what? Didn't get fired from any of them. Didn't get write-ups in my file. Didn't have phone ringing off the hook about me. You're driving a school bus. If you think it's about your supervisor and your boss, once you get out in that big yellow rolling billboard, you got all of John Q. Public with cell phone. Didn't use your signal? You're speeding? Hey! I told people in a school bus, everybody's your boss. Everybody's your supervisor. Everybody's your safety trainer. Because if you're doing something wrong, guess what? Transportation. Yeah, I want to call this bus 777. Went right through the red light. Didn't use his turn signal. It's easy to call on a yellow rolling billboard. I drive the speed limit. I use my turn signals, and I don't get those calls when I drove. You got to deal with students today. They have no clue what's going on outside of that bus. A year ago, I had a girl. She crossed the street. She's supposed to catch the bus when I go into the neighborhood. Doesn't. And I don't change the stop. But when I come back out, if she's late and I see her, I'm going to stop. But as I'm rolling up, she just walks out in front of the street. And she kept doing this and doing this. I said, ma'am, I'm going to tell you. You wait until my stop sign comes out. You look both ways and you look up at me, please. One day she did it again. This time I raised my voice. I said, how many times am I going to tell you? What is it going to take? If a car goes around from behind my bus and hits you when my stop sign isn't out, I'm not going to be able to defend your actions. She didn't like that I raised my voice. I said, well, I don't want to see you dead. 2 days later, she waited. I said, thank you. Good job. 3rd, 4th day went by. She waited. I stopped. My stop sign went out. And I heard some little rice rocket tore out from behind me. And after it went around, I waved her. She goes, do you see that? I said, now do you understand what I was telling you? Just think if you'd have did what you did. Teenagers, you think they're smart? What, you see that and now it connects? And you saw how fast he's going, you would have been killed at that speed. He would have hit and dragged you in that low profile car. He would have dragged you. By the time he got stopped, you would have been tore up. It would have been an ugly scene for all of us to see. Teenagers will get on that bus and look at you like you're retarded, like you're a douche, like you're a dick, an asshole, butthead, whatever. Teenagers, they don't get up in the morning and think, oh, I can't wait to see my bus driver. They get up with whatever bullcrap they got going on at home. They come out the door. And it's gotten so bad, I would say, good morning. And I finally stopped doing it. But man, these kids don't respond. If they speak, I speak. You don't know what's going through their head. Kid got a bad grade on his test and goes in and punches the teacher in the face. Really? And you pull up at some of the schools that I've driven for, the kids get off the bus and head into the woods. They'll jump in waiting cars. You come back in the afternoon, you'll see the car pull up at the street. Kid runs out, jumps on the bus. What's that game? Oh, I went to school, Mom. You went to school, but you left the grounds and you were gone all day, and then you rode the bus home to make it look like. And I had parents coming up to me with their teenage high school kids. My daughter's been getting on your bus, right? I said, yeah. I'm getting a call that she's not going to school. I said, well, you see these woods over here? I said, you'll find blunt and cigarette butts all up in there. I like social media. I use it a lot. But I'm telling you, for teenage girls today with the TikTok obsession, everybody's screaming that men are perverts, men are perverts. You know, your daughter's getting out there with no bra on and in crop top shirts, nipples flying around, whatever kind of retarded dance that they're doing. Nobody cares about that. But men and women that are into women now are looking at that going, ooh, all these hearts, all these likes, all that adrenaline. Look at me, look at me, look at me now, like Blackpink. These girls get on buses. They think they're a queen out there in the underground world of the internet. Man, I don't got to listen to this guy. I had a girl one day, I smelled weed. Somebody had lit up in the bus. I stopped, I got up, I keep my lights on in bus in the dark, and I said, who's smoking pot? I know you're not going to answer me, but I've asked you guys. It's only a matter of time before the camera catches you. Don't do it on my bus. I have students with allergies. I use this bus for training students every day. I have to go to elementary schools and teach the students bus safety. Not anymore. I did when I drove. And you're stinking it up. And administrators are getting on here wondering why my bus is smelling like a pot factory. And a girl said, why don't you just drive the fucking bus? I said, excuse me? You can move up front. Oh my God, for what? Mouthing off to me for starters, and I'm trying to have a talk and I wasn't directing it at you. Maybe I should. And I wasn't taking time. I hadn't even spent 60 seconds on it. And this is what you're up against. And you enter in the lovely dynamic of me being a white guy, and my last involvement with driving school buses was in a part of the country where I am the minority. And African Americans are getting a systematic diet of critical race theory and that whites are bad. And that's going to go well for me being in a position of authority over that ethnic group of students, right? My job is even harder. And fortunately, there are some kids that punch through and they see in me eventually more manhood, more love, and more good qualities than they ever saw in the men in their life. And they suddenly realize I'm not the enemy. And you got kids, middle school on up. Oh my gosh, that was my bus driver. And they just throw their arms around me. Boys, girls, that is huge. But what about the ones that will never like you? They're going to smoke pot. They're going to do what they want. And they know more about legal than you do. They'll go into school. You can't touch me. Get the fuck off of me. And they talk like that to the administrators. How did we as a society let this come to this? Education starts with discipline, man. Sometimes the best education you can get is when you touch the hot stove when you've been told 10 times not to, and now you have burned skin damage for the rest of your life. You'll never do it again after that. But why not prevent that? If I see a toddler run up the stove and I've told them 3 times and I pick them up by the arms and go, psh, I told you. Now they're not going to do it because the butt hurts. And you got these kids smoking dope because mom's at home smoking dope, or dad, or a bunch of guys that think they're the role models standing around that won't get a job. Yard's a mess and they're standing out there, hey, man. I mean, we're in a funny universe today where that group thinks they're cool and the rest of us are of no value. Isn't that awesome? How we've had such a shift and switch. I like driving. I had to get off of it because of the vertigo. And deep down in my heart, after all that I've been through, I wish I had an opportunity. There's a place in Minnesota called, well, it's actually under Michigan State. It's the state of Michigan is Isle Royal in Lake Superior. I wish I could get a job out there where the off season you're just like the caretaker and you're there all by yourself. In the long winters, I'm thinking like, oh, wouldn't that be nice to not have to work with people anymore? You do your job and you're left alone. I'm sad to say this, but I don't like working with people anymore. Even adults within transportation that drive can be difficult. We live in a country now, 330 million Americans. I've lived in Hong Kong. I've been overseas multiple times in Southeast Asia. Love it over there. And the Philippines and Thailand and Southeast Asia is starting to have a problem. You go up to South Korea, you got groups like Blackpink, Asian girls dyeing their hair all different colors with the whole attitude thing, all the materialism in their videos, catchy music, but a whole attitude thing. You've got Filipinos and their children are pushing the envelope into alternative lifestyles, and the family suddenly going, whoa. And all of this has been brought about by the internet. In America, we lead the way in complete disregard and disrespect. And I'm sorry, I'm going to criticize some people out there. Roseanne Barr, when she first came on with her show, I didn't like her. She was cynical and snarky. And then it was Beavis and Butthead and The Simpsons and South Park, which were all disrespecting, snarky, rude shows. And yes, there were Christians and everything was the devil and Tinky Winky was gay and Teletubbies. Teletubbies was a stupid show. Oh, Lala, Tinky Winky. It was stupid. No educational value. It was just mind rot. Clifford the Big Red Dog had more substance to it than Tinky Winky did. Mr. Rogers, one of the greats. Sesame Street, which I don't believe airs anymore. Fabulous programming, bringing all ethnicity levels in. You had puppets and Muppets and characters. They taught you the alphabet and the word for the day and how to count. That was a great tool. What do kids have today? Doodly doodly doo. What are you going to do today? I don't know. What are you going to do? SpongeBob. Really? Teen Titans. I've watched some of these shows. I had to take care of a 9-year-old girl for 3 months, of a friend in Florida who did often trips away, take her to soccer games. And I said, all right, I'm going to sit down and watch these shows and see what the big deal is. Teen Titans. Kid goes in, puts some in the microwave, blows up the microwave, the house sets on fire, shows them put their backpacks on and walk to school. The house is going up in flames. I'm sorry to sound fuddy-duddy, but it's like, really? What is the purpose of this? And kids have that mentality to this day. They'll tear up bus seats. They'll walk on the bus seats. I remember I pulled up in middle school one day a couple of years ago. Student went all the way to the back of the bus and he stepped over all the seats. I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I want to get off." I said, "You want to wait in line?" "No, I don't." I said, "Then why did you go all the way to the back?" And I wrote him up. Fuck that. What the fuck? So you can so go home and walk all over your mother's couch with your shoes on. Man, she'd whip my ass. Oh, so you can do it on the bus. And then you got the mentality of parents that don't control their own children, and they'll come up to the door. "You wrote up my son?" "Yes, ma'am, I did. I didn't write him up for this, this, this. I moved him to the front. I tried to do this. I tried to do that." Now, in the last place I worked, driving a bus, and remember, I'm a white guy, and these were black women, big enough to hurt me. And I was calm to them. I explained to them what I did. And I was pleasantly surprised to see when I just talked to them calmly and said, with Billy, and I'm using a fake name, "I did this. I tried to work with them." But then he walked back there and said, "Fuck you, bitch," to Sally, and then punched her in the face. I can't let that slide. Once they hit somebody, I have to turn that in. And 9 times out of 10, these black women would lean around the corner of the step. "Come here. Man, when you get home, I'm going to tear up your behind. You didn't tell me all that." "I'm sorry, Mr. Nelson. Here's my phone number. If you have any problems, you call me." Thank God for that. I live in a society right now where a lot of women, 75% of these women, the men have used them as a sexual recreational facility and left after they had kids. So they're not real enamored with men. Then you throw in the white factor. And the last thing I'm going to do as a bus driver is start talking to them with tone. I want to disarm them. Does anybody get an idea what bus drivers are up against? Some. How about the transportation places you work for? Do they have any idea what their own employees are up against? Well, they say they do. Does it translate into change in action? No. Most places get new managers that lay more layers of responsibility. Tablets, checking in on a tablet, pre-trip on a tablet, looking at a screen, which sets off even more vertigo. Now, the laptop is better for me than a phone or a tablet. You're driving and now you got to enter student counts. Oh, those are fun. You think it would just pull up your route and say AM, PM? Nope. You got to click on the list and you got to scroll down the list and you got to pull up the school. Then you got to, is it AM, PM, or midday? AM. What's the date? What's the time? Sign. Wow, I got to go through 10 minutes of this to put in one student count? I'm not going to do it. Not going to do it. If I get in trouble, I'll say why. I'll write it on a piece of paper. I'll turn it in the mailbox. Well, we're trying to get away from paper. But you won't increase the wage. I started driving in 1990, Duluth, Minnesota, a stick shift Ford Ward Detroit diesel bus. Cold-blooded as all get out. We're talking Duluth, man. 94, we got down to 38 below, not counting wind chill. There's been wind chill upwards of 65 to 85 below. And I used to love winter. Kids were so different back then. So different. And I stressed then, oh my gosh, what I wouldn't give to have those routes to this day. With all the snow and the ice and the road hazards, I would give my left arm to have those routes today. I had I don't know if they were Hutterites, Amish, or Quakers. The girls all wore buns in their hair, nice dresses. And they came up and gave me an invitation to dinner And I had to decline. I had no way to get out there. They were out in the country. I rode the city bus, and the city bus didn't go out there. For years, I was a single guy in Duluth. I wanted to go. I said, could you please let your mother know? I don't have a way to get out there, and I have to decline. Mothers gave me coffee cups and goodies. One lady gave me flannel button-up shirts, which, if you know anything about Minnesota, flannel was awesome. Wool, and it was warm. What do you get today? Fuck you, homie, whitey. I don't got to listen to your bullshit. I was in a middle school one day. Kids were fighting every day. I had to cover another route. It was even worse than my own. And I said, before we leave, we're going to have a meeting. I said, you need to sit down on the bus. If you don't, I'm going to turn the bus around and come back to school. I've talked to my supervisor. You guys cannot just get up and walk around. You cannot stand up and do what you want. Several black guys stood up and said, I don't got to listen to your fucking bullshit. And I said, and I don't got to listen to yours either. Have a nice day. And they walked off. This is what we're up against. And just me saying this, there are groups of people out there say, oh, well, you must be racist. Come watch me and see how racist I'm not. You don't buy your house in a part of the city, in a part of the neighborhood, and I'm the minority. You don't do this if you're racist. So fail on your part. But how do the black drivers down here do? Any better? No. They got the same crap to deal with that I did. And I assumed that they would listen to their own kind. No. Grown black men that have been in the business for 25 years said, man, I can't believe the way these kids think they can talk to me. Man, when I was growing up, my dad would have slapped me across the room. Back to my original thing. Kids are arrogant as all get out today, and social media has given a platform, not just with kids, but adults. And from my perspective, limited though it may be, I've seen women get even worse. They're full of themselves. And social media, man, here's my food. Here's my doggy. Here's me, armpit 1, armpit 2. Ooh, I'm sexy. And now I can do this on a video and get 5,000 views and all hearts. That's the culture you're dealing with. Mama smokes pot, kid smokes pot. What's wrong with this guy? You got drivers who won't deal with it. They'll just ignore it. You got drivers that they're just going to drive. You get somebody like me who that smell is pungent. I don't like it. I'm going to say, hey, next time you get on here, get your blunt spray, please. And yes, eventually a lot of these kids, as I'm pulling up, they're spraying themselves down. And as I open the door, I said, thank you for at least doing that. I'm against drugs, but I'm not going to get into that as discussion with them. Respect. It's about respect. And there's a lot of people teach, well, the reason they're not respecting you is because, no, this has nothing to do with me. I don't start off my morning like growling at them. I live in a society where I'm a friendly guy. I go into a store, you look at a clerk and smile, and you get this mean-looking face, no smile. I mean, this is the world we're living in. For me to be nice today is detrimental. I have to go out in a place like that and just keep a stiff upper lip. It's sad when you got to do that with students. Teens today, they're not the same as 1990. invitations to dinners, invitation to bat mitzvah by a Jewish girl in Denver. Had a lot of Jewish students on a middle school route. Talk about change. Place Middle School. Nobody liked driving Place Middle School in the 90s. I was one bus going into an apartment complex. When you say the number and the street, everybody's like, oh gosh. I was that bus back in the 90s. Hispanic, Asian, black, and white, all on the same bus. 65 kids on a 60, or 60, what do I have? 65 kids on a 65 passenger bus. Full to the gills, couldn't walk down the aisle, 3 to a seat. And 2 Hispanic girls start calling each other bitch and fighting and pulling hair, and kids are pulling stuffing out of the already torn up seats and throwing stuff out the windows. I mean, this looked like a scene from a bad movie. And the first thing I had to do was get in between the girls and say, this is your stop, get off. The other ones, sit down. Rest of you guys, what are you doing? Then I shut the door. And the girl says, oh my gosh, those are her adult friends and they're following us. I have to make call to dispatch to have permission to drop the student off at her house. There was a fight involving her. Now there was a carload of people following my bus. So I stopped several blocks before her place, pulled over to the right, and I looked out the window and I put my arm, go. It wouldn't move. So I just waited until they finally sped off. Then I pulled on around, said, ma'am, do not do anything different than I tell you. When I open that door, you go straight to your door. I want to see you go in. You shut that door, and only then am I going to leave. The next day, I put the hammer down. I said, we got assigned seats on this bus. I said, I thought I was hauling students. I'm hauling people that are acting like animals, and animals don't even do this. I said, you have torn up every seat. We're talking a hole in the vinyl lining and all that heavy-duty foam tore up. They had done this to the bus before I inherited it. And I had a monitor who was doing nothing. I'm going down Parker, which comes down into Leedsdale. Anybody who lives in Denver knows about that in the winter. You get a sheen of ice on that. You don't want to go down rush hour traffic. And sure enough, I've got a heavy loaded bus headed to the middle school. And as I'm sliding down that road, going ever so slow and shifting it from driving to neutral. Yes, I do that. And I'm gently trying to get control and traction. And this middle school white kid comes running down the aisle and puts in my face a little plastic horse. See my horsey? True story. Thankfully, I caught traction. I come to a stop. I looked at him. I said, are you out of your mind? Did you not see we're sliding? You want to see my horsey? And I started laughing. I said, what is wrong with you, dude? And he started laughing. I said, go sit down. Oh my gosh. And the whole bus got a good laugh about that. There's some drivers that would have gone battle axe mode. I learned to try to turn things around. I tell myself all the time, when I look up at that mirror, don't react. Just watch for a minute. Get a good view of what's going on before you. I had to teach myself child psychology. Some things are not as it appears. And you start yelling. And then the kids will go, oh, yeah, see? Just bus drivers, all you do is yell. What are you guys doing back there? Nothing. Pull the brake. Let me go on back there and look. Mister, I didn't do it. Oh, I thought we weren't doing anything. What's going on? Then you find out something really was going on and somebody else fessed up, and I didn't even make an accusation. I used to have fun when the kids were loading in a middle school in Colorado. And this kid's got his back to me, and he's over there going, "Aah!" and yelling at everybody. And as I'm walking down the aisle, I do this to all the kids facing me. And I walk up and I said, what are you doing? Oh my gosh, the kid's about shit his pants. Oh my God, you scared me. I said, guilty conscience? And the whole bus started laughing. I said, put your butt down and quit acting up. Yes, sir. I love middle school. They have energy. They need guidance. High school, they're done wrecked. If they're still doing this stuff, they think they're the adult. They don't have a job. They're not doing well in their grades. They're standing there smoking pot, and they're going to act like you're a dumbass. You notice how arrogance blinds you to the reality of what you are not? It's fun, isn't it? But the problem for me is when you're not getting the backing you need, it don't matter what you do. You got kids, it don't matter if you're nice. They're kids that no matter what, they're not going to respect you, period, because they don't respect. They think they got the Pharaoh complex or whatever you want to call it. You're not going to manage them. You're not going to manage them at all. You write them up. They don't get kicked off. You tell them to sit in the front, and sometimes that's the worst thing you can do all through the ride. Why do you got me in the front seat? Because you're running your mouth back there. Well, could you stop talking to me? I've got a route to focus on. I'm trying to get the kids to school safely. I really don't want to have this discussion with you. You know why you're in the front. If you want to be free from the front, quit doing what you do, and you can go back there and sit with your friends. Simple. You make the choice of where you want to sit on the bus. But am I right in saying you're racist? And I started laughing. I said, let me see. Everybody on this bus is black, and you're the only one I have to get on the case with. So how does that make me racist? Have you ever turned around and looked? Do you see anybody else doing what you're doing? It doesn't answer the question because somewhere in all that jumbled up head of his, oh, yeah, I guess he's got a point. Yeah, racism. Nice try. So, and I bring this up because you say this on a school bus page, and I'm offended by your comments. You get this from other drivers. Well, why don't you come on out in this place where I live and drive these kids around and see how fun it is? Because they'll do it to you too. And what's really fun is to have the views I have today. Oh my gosh, we're living in a toxic wasteland in this country. My views are normal, or they used to be. I'm not normal. I'm different. I'm unique as hell. One of my favorite movies was Morgan Freeman in the Lean on Me movie. A lot of Hollywood artistic license there, but it's funny, you can't do that today. You have this chubby kid who's doing drugs, and he takes him on the roof of the gym and says, go ahead, jump. Man, you do that today, I'm gonna sue trying to tell my kid to jump out of school. But Freeman was making a point. You might as well do it because that's what you're doing every time you do drugs. How come people who actually try to be tough are the ones under fire today? Why is that? And PBIS? Now, there's people that will argue both sides of the fence for that, but let me tell you, that doesn't always work. PBIS is positive behavior, and it doesn't always work. The Bible says, spare the rod, spoil the child. I do not believe in abuse. Some people define spanking as abuse. The law says if you leave a red mark, well, yeah, if you slap a kid on the butt with a switch, there's going to be a red mark. Is that abuse? No. If you leave welts and cut up skin, yeah. You strike a kid in the face and you call that discipline, you shouldn't be in charge of students. And I like what somebody said. Use the rod of correction and the hands of love. You shouldn't be using your hand on a child. I agree with that. Except if you're defending yourself against an absolute cretin. I had a student at a school in Denver years ago. I had a pretty good bus, middle school, and it was mostly black kids. I didn't have a problem with the route back then. It was a middle school that made the news with a black kid standing on the teacher's desk saying, "Fuck you, BITCH," on camera. This is one of the schools I drove for. This kid says, "Mister, what would you do if I punched you in the face?" Okay, first of all, I didn't expect a question like that. It's a peaceful, quiet morning. Most of the kids are on snooze, and you got this leveled at you. I turned and I said, "I'd drop you in that step well so fast you wouldn't know what's hit you. You can't do that." I said, "You want to bet? I'll lose my job over that. I'm not going to sit there and take that." Now, most districts, this was in the 90s, most districts have told us that you can use reasonable technique to stop somebody. You know, if a fourth grade kid comes up and pops you in the lip, you're not going to cold cock that kid in the face. Okay. But you got a high school student who's 200 pounds and he's got me in a headlock, and the only thing I can do is knee him in the balls and drop him in the steps. I won't be able to justify that in a courtroom. But we shouldn't even have to think about this. So the point of this video is saying we got a society that doesn't want to change this problem. We got a system that doesn't want to change this problem. And while they have their cutesy little commercials, "Come drive with us, hiring bonus," people say, forget it. There's a bonus coming this spring at the transportation that I drove for. People are quitting now. They're not waiting until March or April to get it. It's $1,000, I believe. I, as a white guy, after driving inner city, drive-by shooting neighborhoods, carjacking neighborhoods, had less problems with the kids than when I moved out to the South here. And me feeling like I'm stripped of my dignity and my worth, and to be so disrespected, and I drive smooth, greet them, wait for them to sit down. They're running a half a minute late out of the house. I don't yell, "Hey, you need to get it together." Try to understand the culture when in Rome, and you get this kind of crazy stuff going on. "Mister, why do you always got to walk to the back of the bus?" I said, "I'm doing the student count because we got to school 2 minutes early, and I'd rather do it instead of when you're all getting off and I lose track." "Well, we don't like it when you come back here." "Well, that's too bad. I'm in charge of this bus and I'm going to walk back here." You got kids saying that to you. If you guys are doing what's right, you shouldn't care that I walk back here. You guys don't own the domain. This is a public bus. Fortunately, I've never been hit or attacked by a student, threatened numerous times, cussed at, degraded. And some of those kids never got removed, ever. When the starting wage is $13 an hour, and you can go to Walmart and start at $15 an hour putting stuff away on a shelf, I think the answer is pretty obvious. Do your 8 hours at Walmart, put stuff away, not have to deal with all that, and go home and live a life of peace. Or you can lay in your bed at night with the altercation that a student created and go, "Man, I got to get in that bus in the morning and deal with this again, and nobody's backing me." Let's see, put away boxes or deal with reprobate children. Yeah, I took a cut in pay. I've got a house I'm trying to remodel. I just finished painting this bedroom the other day. But the stress in my life went. Thank you for listening. I do not hate children. But when you have a political party, when you have an educational system, when you have social media, and you have all these conflicting and competing, attention grabbing things going on, Most teenage girls care more about TikTok, Instagram, and social media than they do about your feelings or anything else. You got kids living with their parents that buy them fancy iPhones and everything, and they don't even respect their parents. And what's really wrong is when you have parents dressing like their teenage daughter and vice versa. And, 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 and I'm going to say this, in a part of the country where I'm located, it has been communicated to me by locals here that in an area I did drive for, that many of the mothers rent out their teenage daughters for, you guessed it, so they get their drug money or their grocery money or whatever. So you got those kids getting on the bus, 14, 15, doing something with a 60-year-old man. You think they're going to listen to me? Why? They figure they're in the adult realm now. A lot of people in this country don't realize, and I ran into other bus drivers in what I call snow globe bus routes, snow globe towns, where they don't have these kinds of problems, and those towns exist. I've driven for those places. I remember having good kids that sat down with parents that greeted me. Good morning, Michael. Good to see you. And those days are gone over on this side of the world. And when I would post something, they would say, oh, well, I never have a problem with my kids. Of course you don't. They're your same skin color. You live in a town where everybody knows everybody that knows everybody. Change up that dynamic, and I promise you, you won't be saying the same. I have 4 different states. I could go drive a bus in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and have less problems there than I do in the South. I could go drive for some tiny little town in Montana. Would there be bad kids? Of course there would be. Absolutely. We're sinners, man. And as long as they're sinners, we're going to sin, and you're going to always have kids. They're going to test you. But kids, if they're not too far gone, if you conduct yourself rightly, will eventually respect you and stop giving you a hard time. That's what I've found. When you conduct yourself, when they see you going the speed limit, when they see you not hitting the curbs and jerking the kids around, or if you do got to run over the curb and you gently walk it up and you gently walk it down and don't bang them and slam them, they go, oh, he cares. How do they know? Show it by how you drive the vehicle. This is basic psychology 101. Trust the actions, not the words. If I'm grinding to a stop and grinding gears and yelling at the kids when they get on and hitting curbs, you think they're going to respect that? You think they're going to go, oh, this guy really cares about us? Of course they won't. When they see me sweep and clean my bus every single day, they're less likely to throw trash, because then it highlights, ooh, if he finds a piece of trash under my seat, he's going to know that I did this. But there's too many political and social agendas out there that aren't very constructive and good for this country today. And I'm not going to get into that on this video. We've had a shift, a Grand Canyon size shift in values and the way people look at the world. We went from a society that said there was Adam and Eve and God told them to get married and, leave their mother and father. Now we've got 2 mommies, 2 daddies. We've got people that don't want to be called he or she. They're non-binary. We've got, according to one female friend of mine, she believes there's 87,000 genders. So we live in this kind of a world. And if you notice, I said a friend of mine that even with all this going on, I still will listen to people and respect them as an individual, whether I agree with them or not. That's a lost art with many people today. And we live in a dumb society where somebody says, oh, you're hanging around with that person and you must. No, I'm different. I'm a conservative. I'm a Christian. And a lot of conservatives and Christians don't hang out with me because they see me do things that they go, that isn't what we're used to. Good. You need more of that in your life. But I got to go out in this world and watch what's happening. I see deterioration. I see rot setting in. I don't want to drive these kids today. It causes too much stress, causes too much anxiety. I do not believe in Hillary Clinton. It takes a village, except I will say this. I don't agree with her stuff, but it takes a village in the context that a functional, a healthy, non-dysfunctional society. It takes parents, teachers, bus drivers, police, pastors. It takes a neighborhood. I remember growing up in Torrance, 2814 Delmate Street. That was a tract home. The original footprint of the house is still the same. That house is worth $1 million now. My parents probably paid 34 back in the 60s. They don't own it anymore. Growing up in that, we'd walk home from school. We'd pick up rocks that were in somebody's yard, toss them out in the street for a car to run over. By the time we got home, every mother in the neighborhood was called by somebody in the neighborhood saying, "Yeah, do you know Timmy, Tommy, Davy, and Michael and Dougie were throwing rocks?" You have a parent call another parent or knock on their door. "Who do you think you are talking about my child?" So I've gone from that era to this. Man, I couldn't get away with a blasted thing back in the day. My parents were abusive and they put an eye catch on the outside of my bedroom door. When I got home from school, I was sitting in my room every day with the door locked. I had to knock on the door and beg to be let out to go to the bathroom. And I finally got so tired of that, I just peed in the corner of my bedroom behind the bed. Can you imagine today what would happen? I didn't know anything about CPS, Child Protective Services. Didn't know about that. My parents would be in so much trouble if they did that today. I'd be locked in my room on the weekends all day. My mother would bring my breakfast in, shut and lock the door. I'd slide the window open, climb out, run around in the yard. Neighbor called my dad. "Hey, Mr. So and so, your son keeps climbing in and out of his bedroom window." My dad came in and took a 4-inch, 16 penny framing nail, drove it into the window where I couldn't open it no more. So then my next trick was to bring pocketfuls of sand from the schoolyard playground and dump it all in the windowsill. And I'd take little green plants, without the roots and sticks, and I'd set it all up in there and I'd pour water in there. If you want to know about how disconnected my parents were to me, it took a long time before my mother and dad even noticed that I had a sandbox in the wooden frame windowsill. So when I talk about troubled kids, I was one of them. Did I grow up having good stuff, good food, clothes, and toys? Absolutely. My mother was immature. She'd get mad at my father over nothing. My dad always tried to be gentle. He'd go to hug her, she'd push him away. That's the kind of role model I had. My mother would sleep on the couch with the TV going all day, all night. My mother would put my father down, he snored. He ate his food loud because he was missing a lot of his molars. My mother was extremely disrespectful to my father. Looking back, seeing a woman disrespect her own husband in front of us kids was not good for us. Now, today, I work with adults, and you take my white background and bring me into a background of African American women that are domineering and tend to be very loud. And I had to tell a woman, you need to stop yelling at me. You need to understand Black culture. We always yell. I said, If I, as a white guy, go up to a Black woman and approach her with shouting, you know she's not going to receive that. And the reason I bring this up is because if we keep letting this stuff happen and let our media give special privilege to a race of people, 13% of the US population, and tell the rest of us that we're racist and we're privileged, you see where we're headed, right? It's only a matter of time before they push us over the side and get away with it. And they're going to end up doing the same thing that they accused us of back in the day when racism and slavery was alive and well. We need pushback, folks. We need people to stand up and say, we need equity for all. We don't need to be teaching kids that this race is more. We need to stop that. Teach these kids how to get a damn job. Bring back home ec. Teach them about pregnancy. Teach them about sex and teach them properly. Don't be making value judgments. Let them figure that out for themselves. Teach kids that there's a belief in creation that God created, and teach them there's a belief in evolution. They got to remember both answers for the test, but let them decide. It is not the job of the school system to tell kids what they will believe about the origins of the universe or sexuality. But now that's a loaded question. You've got schools teaching Billy it's okay if he wants to be called Sally and go to the girls' bathroom. I have a problem with that. If I had a daughter and I saw some man dressed as a chick go in there, I'm going to be opening. So hold on, let me get my daughter out of there before you go in there. Any reasonable parent would do that. We're standing on the verge of a titanic shift. You got workplaces now where a guy's becoming a woman, and if you call him a sir, he can get you fired, or she. And as I told somebody the other day on a Facebook video, how do you avoid that? Don't use pronouns at all. When you talk to them, say, okay, thank you, have a good day. Don't say sir, don't say ma'am. Don't get roped into the foolishness. But it's stupid that we have to live this way. I told a group of Hispanic girls one day on a very nasty middle school route in Denver, I said, have a good weekend, ladies. We're not ladies, we're men. And at that time, this was years ago, I said, whatever. I said, man, I'm just trying to be nice and you guys got to be rude. And no, I don't believe they're men. You're girls riding a bus with an attitude. But guess what? There's somebody listening. Oh, that's really offensive. I don't care. Your belief is offensive and you want to push that on us. So we live in this culture where teens are not growing up in a sense of normalcy. How about this one? 2 times in my elementary school life, it was Christmas Eve. My mother came into my room, yelled, took everything on the dresser, everything on the shelves, took the dresser drawers, pulled them out, and dumped everything on the floor. Even a seashell collection that her father had given me, and a horseshoe crab with the big long stinger tail out of it. She threw that, broke the stinger tail off, went into a rage, stomped on stuff, busted things. And after she was done with all that, and I hadn't even done anything, ordered me to clean up the room. That evening, my grandparents and relatives came over, and my mother's, Merry Christmas! That's the kind of fucked up home I grew up in. So I really don't like Christmas. I'm not into it anyway. I have no desire to celebrate it or be part of all that foolishness. I do not like plastic women at all. I can't stand them. I avoid them like the plague. I'm rough cut lumber. If you slide your hand up and down it, you're going to get splinters. And in this polished fake world with the commercials trying to sell you all of corporate America and steal all your dollars, notice how fake and flaky everything is. So a guy like me comes out into this society. I can relate to middle schoolers because they're like rough cut lumber too. You slide your hand, you're going to get a handful of splinters. I identify with the middle schoolers because they're going through all this flux and shift of the bodies and puberty and all that. The Bible has a verse that's very interesting. When the foundations are shaken, what can the righteous do? Let's put this into more secular vernacular. When what was normal is no longer normal, and this generation is saying normal is evil, what can we do? That's a damn good question. You're going to continue to see an exit from bus driving and teaching, because any woman or man that has a spine in any Judeo-Christian ethic, or even gives a crap about their own dignity and self-worth, is going to say, I'm not dealing with this. It's just not worth it. You're up against the system that is working against you because you have a stand and a backbone. Picture the FAO Schwartz commercial coming on. Fa la 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 toys. That's what they want you to be. Bouncy tents and loud rap music at schools because, PBIS. The kids are failing, but we're going to have a bouncy tent party all day and give them loads of pixie sticks and candy and then send them back on the bus to go, wah! What is education doing today? It begs the question, are there good school systems out there? Absolutely. Are there good administration and teachers and principals and transportation that back their drivers? Yeah, but that's shrinking by the day. Contract companies are getting dialed up all the time. And contract companies do not have your back at all. They micromanage the hell out of you. They pay you a lower wage, and they're going like this to their drivers all day long. When I worked at Durham School Services, one of our safety trainers went to management and said, why are you guys picking on Pacific? He's one of our best drivers, and you guys are picking at him constantly. Contract companies don't want experienced drivers. They want newbies who are afraid to death to lose their job. Nobody wants to lose their job. I don't want to get fired. I don't have this mentality, well, fuck them. Getting fired is a blow. You got a young generation. Let them fire me. I don't care. I do. That's my name. I want to do well at what I do. You get new managers in transportation all across the country. They've done this and they've done that, and they're going to come in and change everything. And the same rotten supervisors are still over the drivers that can't say good morning, and they scowl and growl, and it's like you got a room full of furniture. You got an overstuffed chair that's slashed into ribbons and one leg's missing and it's tilted like this. You got a couch that's got barf vomit and dog poo all over it. And the cushions are all stained and smells like mold and funk. And management comes in and moves all that furniture around and says, look, we changed everything. That chair and that couch need to go in the dumpster. Meaning some of the people over us. You keep changing the furniture, but you're not dealing with the root of the problems. How about if you go back to some of these schools and say, why are you not backing up our drivers when this kid's smoking weed at the bus stop? Well, because we can't prove it. Okay, when I hire a bus driver, I have no reason to believe he's going to fabricate stuff, and our camera doesn't show what's going on outside the door. So do I need to go down there and be a witness to this? Because if I go down there, I'm going to physically call the parent and say, this student is not allowed to ride anymore. That's what we need. It does take a village in that context. You're not allowed to tell kids what their values are to be. But why is it kids are allowed to rule over us, reign over us, and trample our values and disrespect us in American society? You know, it's interesting. If you read Old Testament law, if a child cursed his mother and father, he is to be stoned. I can just hear the extremist liberals out there going, "That's high law." No, it isn't. Maybe if we implemented that today, we'd see disrespect go right out the window. We coddle, we enable, we have unhealthy codependencies with parents and teachers, and everybody just wants to get through their day. They want everything to go smooth. They don't want to rock the boat. But guess what? Somebody's rocking the boat. When kids can take over an intersection in Austin, Texas, driving like complete maniacs, that angers me. Take their damn cars away, impound them, don't give them back, sell them, put the money back into the police department, and put those kids behind bars and make them go through the courts and all that and take their license away and end the foolishness. Why are you giving adrenaline-charged, pubescent kids that much authority? If I'd have done that, my dad bought me a 74 AMC Matador, $700 special. If I'd have done that with that car, my dad would have plowed my behind with a belt, taken the car for me. And listen to these kids. No, the police can't stop us. Whoosh. Why are we letting this happen in our country? Why? Why are we letting kids have more rights than adults and parents? And who came up with the stupid idea? Listen to this. You divorce, you got to pay child support as a man. Understand? But that child support can be continued until they're 21 if they choose to go to college. Now, who do you think came up with that idea? Conservatives or Democrats? He's 18. Why am I responsible for 4 more years of this crap? My son didn't go to college, thank God. I could get into many layers of this onion of just what kids grow up with in their home. I often talk about a book I read from the 1970s called The Incompatibility of Men and Women. And believe me, it's dead on. He was not a Christian. He was a secular psychologist, but he said nothing but truth in the book, talking about the difference between men and women. And you got women today saying they can outperform and do things better than a man. No, they can't. Women and men have different strengths and weaknesses. And I don't like pitting the sexes against each other, but our society does. You see women wearing shirts that say it's a girl thing you wouldn't understand, and girls rock and girls rule. And so far to date, in most places I worked where there was female dominated management, it was extremely broken. Now, I'm not saying that men are perfect. I've worked for men that were no good either. But you take me, who's raised not by my parents, but as a Christian, I don't believe women should have authority over me. And that's not because I'm a chauvinist or misogynistic. I believe men are the head of their house. And I believe that men should be in the workplaces, and men should be in the Marines and military and the police, and women should not be in charge of us. But that's not the way this culture sees it. In Denver, you got Muslim kids moving to Denver, telling female drivers, I don't got to listen to you. We don't listen to women in our culture. And the kid has to be reminded of, well, this is America and this is the way we do things. And you have Muslim kids that will stand up and piss right in the middle of the aisle on the bus to show their disrespect for a woman driving their bus. Student management doesn't teach you all these things, does it? And student management, when it is taught, acts as if though that this is the way that it works and that it's guaranteed. No, it doesn't. If you don't get backing on the stuff that you're writing up a kid for, then student management is out the window. When you're getting the runaround in your training and then you get out there in the real life and you tell the company, what are you going to do, boss? What are you going to do? Please stop talking about why you're losing drivers. Let's start with the adults that are over us. Do they say good morning and greet us? Are they glad that we showed out? No. Look, I'm one of those crazy people that believes America is pretty much done. I'm one of those people that I've seen enough. We're sliding down the abyss so fast. And people keep believing in fairy tales that we're going to somehow come back. I'm watching stuff with Russia, China, and the world scene, and it's like, folks, the sunset years have already hit us. I just wish I had made enough money and was smarter when I was younger and got residency in another country and pulled up. Because honestly, if I ever had a cash cow hit me, I'm looking at Zambia or Kenya or the Philippines or Thailand. So I can live my life and be left alone. When a country allows kids to have more rights than us, and if a bus driver says fuck you to a student who says fuck you to him, that bus driver can get fired. But a kid can say fuck you, you write them up, they won't take that kid off the bus. How is that? Why do kids get a free pass? Well, you don't know their back. They don't know mine. Stop that crap. Man, I come to work every day. I don't got to deal with this. I don't got to be disrespected by some little asshole who's got papa issues at home. Seriously. Well, why is this the one? Well, but you're the adult. Oh, okay. So it means the kid can shit on me, threaten me, and tear up the seats and punch girls around all day, and you're not going to do anything. Okay, I got you. You know what? This is just proof that we're not evolving and evolution is not true. I love this argument because people want to say Darwinian evolution. Tell me how our society is getting better. We got all these factions. You got feminism, you got Christianity, you've got Buddhism, Islam, atheism, humanism, New Age. You've got all this kaleidoscope of stuff. You got kids that grow up in strict disciplinary and authoritarian homes. You got kids that grow up in abusive homes. You got kids that grow up in abuse and permission homes, Disneyland homes. I see more kids get on the bus. Look, I got a new iPhone. A week later, it's broken and it doesn't work. Mom, can you get me a new one? She just spent $1,000 or $1,200 for the one. Wow, I took care of my stuff. These kids, easy come, easy go. When our society has gotten to the point that it is, historically speaking, where kids have more rights than we do, our disaster is not far off. My opinion, I'll own it. And you wonder why people don't want to drive the kids anymore. And you wonder why people like me not too far from 60. He says, I don't even want to date a woman with kids. No thanks. Not today. Thanks for listening. This is Pacific. Stay tuned.